good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining our CKAN Monthly Live number 15. This is our first meetup for the year, and I'm really glad that so many people joined. So before I tell you, I'm gonna switch my phone first. Apologize for that. Before I tell you more about our guest today, which you've met, I guess everybody met. This is Joel Natividad, who's CEO and co-founder of Datapusher. And before I tell you more about his presentation, as always, I am about to share some interesting events which are coming up. As you know, we have an initiative which is called events, and the idea is to announce interesting events around data, open data, and open source. I've prepared 3 events, although there are plenty more, but I'll just mention them, and then if you're interested, you can find, maybe I should drop the link again. So the link to the meeting, just one second. I'll just drop the link for the newcomers because I know that there is no history. So you can find all these links in the meeting notes document and in the presentation that you see on screen. So the first event is Data Team Summit, which is an annual virtual community event. Basically, it gathers data professionals and experts like data engineers, administrators, architects, analysts, and they discuss DataOps related stuff. It's a free event, and I think you can still, if you're interested in speaking, you can still join. The next event is a conference, which is around open data and energy analytics. It's in February, and probably I'll mention it next time as well. It is in Sydney, Australia, and digital as well. So basically, if you're a researcher or you do some research around open data and energy analytics, you have the opportunity to participate and to submit your paper as well. And the next event and last one is pretty, like, it's in March, but I want to start speaking about that in now, because there is a call for proposal. So basically you can, it's a big event, it's Open Data Week. We all know it. It happens usually in March. You can submit your proposals if you want to participate. It's an annual festival. It's community driven, and it's organized by Beta, NYC, Data True Design, and other people. The agenda for today is we're going to have a presentation from Joel Natividad, who's gonna speak about Datapusher Plus. This is a fork of Datapusher, and Joe will tell us more about CKAN Datastore background, current ways data is loaded into the CKAN Datastore, and how Datapusher Plus improves on these existing methods and what additional capabilities it unlocks. After Joe's presentation, we're going to have a Q&A session, and we're going to open the floor for questions. There are 2 ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and go ahead, or you can drop questions in the chat. After the Q&A session, as always, we're going to have community announcements and sharing. For those of you who are not aware, if you want to share something with the community, if you have some interesting project or anything, or you want to participate maybe in future CKAN Live, you can, this is the time to share with us. All right, so if you want to add things to the agenda, there is the link to the meeting note in the chat. I'll share it one more time because there are newcomers joining after I started. So you can, there is a meeting doc where you can suggest, you can either add things to the agenda or you can suggest a topic. You can also leave your contact information. I encourage you to do that because we are here to connect as well, so that can be useful for other people. There is a special space where you can leave your contact details. Okay, and yeah, just to flag to people that the meeting's being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I think I can give the mic to Joel now. You are a co-host, and you should be able to share your screen. Let me know.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and then I'll stop presenting. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Joanna. So yes, welcome to 2023. So last year has been a great year for CKAN, and I look forward to more developments and innovations in the CKAN community. So one contribution we have is Datapusher Plus. So let me just present it now quickly. Okay, so Datapusher Plus, taking the CKAN Datastore to the next level. I don't think I need to explain what the Datastore is. Everybody who's here must have played around with it. But let me give a little history about how we got here. So I'm sure, as Joanna said, Datapusher Plus is a fork of Datapusher. Datapusher is one of the core components of CKAN that is used to populate the data store. You know, it uses this component called messy tables, unfortunately named, I think, and it does inferencing of data types by sampling and underscore sampling. And it had Excel support, it had PDF support, it had zip support. And at the time of its introduction, it was really pushing the boundaries, and it was really good at the time. You know, that was in 2013, 10 years ago. But it's no longer actively maintained, and we found some issues with it. Primarily that it was not tolerant of data quality issues. So when back then we were even discussing, you know, a lot of things in the community. Somebody even proposed that maybe we should work on messy tables too. I also proposed that maybe, hey, we need to make the Datapusher multipass so it can do a lot more robust inferencing that's tolerant of data quality issues and extract more metadata. And you know, I had this laundry list of things I wanted to do, and this was back in May 2015. I said, okay, it will do 4 passes, and it will do all these things, compute the data dictionary, extract metadata, and then do mapping and linking and all that good stuff. You know, I was kind of dreaming back then of what the potential of Datapusher and the Datastore was. But unfortunately, you know, that didn't happen. And the year after, 2016, our first open data startup, Ontodia, was acquired by OpenGov. The good thing then is OpenGov being a Silicon Valley venture-backed company, we had resources at our disposal. And one of the things we did was support the development of what we thought was a next generation Datapusher, which is XLoader, short for Express Loader. And it addresses the key deficiencies of Datapusher that we thought was becoming the #1 source of support issues. We were rolling out CKAN implementations across the country, and oftentimes, because we often include the Datastore, you know, the Datapusher was not really very robust, and it was causing a lot of support issues, and it was really slow. So this was addressed by David Reed, who developed Express Loader. We supported that development in OpenGov, and it was exponentially faster, 10 times faster. It was robust, but at the cost of kind of dumbing down the inferencing. It didn't even attempt to inference the data, basically. Basically, it loaded everything as text. And it was faster because it was just pumping the data using a PostgreSQL copy. And it was a simpler queuing tech, and it was simpler to deploy. So that was good in 2018. The year before, you know, we have some engagement in the open data community and the Civic Analytics Network. They came up with a wish list of things that they wanted to see in open data solutions. And the Civic analytics network is basically a consortium of chief data officers and analytics principals in the public sector. I think they work out of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Ash Center for Government. And they came up with all these things that they wanted to see in the open data space. One thing I want to highlight here: move away from the single data set centric view, geospatial data as a first-class data type, decrease the cost and work of publishing data, large data sets, and all that. And transparent pricing. And I think we answered that because we're open source, right? People can choose to deploy on their own. And in our case, we have done some other data pushing projects and experiments preceding Datapusher Plus. So we worked with the city of San Antonio, Texas. We built this thing called the data pump. Basically, it's a way to pump IoT time series data, near real-time data into CKAN. That was a good experiment. We use pandas, we use JSON schema to do validation of the data, and it had a simple queuing system as well. And it for that specific use case of pumping time series IoT data, it was good, and it's still being used. And also in around this time frame, we were engaged by we were building an enterprise catalog for a hedge fund. And as you can imagine, a hedge fund have all kinds of data sources, and they wanted a central metadata catalog of where all the data is meant. May it be in a mainframe, may it be in Snowflake, may it be in a SQL Server database, may it be sitting in Dropbox. They just wanted to crawl all their data assets and catalog it in CKAN. But one of the requirements of that project was, can you extract metadata from these data sources proactively without the data publisher annotating the catalog, or at least give the data publisher, the data curator, a head start by doing all these inferencing? And we attempted to do that. At first we use, I'm sure if you deal with data, a popular tool, CSV Kit. But the thing with CSV Kit was, even though it had the capabilities, it was memory constrained and it was slow. So we started using this other tool called XSV, which was written in Rust, and it was really fast. But the problem was it wasn't actively maintained. So we came up with another renamed fork of ours. We called it the QSV. And you can see my good art skills here. We're coming up with the logo. And before I jump into the demo, just a little check on where the CKAN Datastore is. I think, like I was dreaming back in 2015 when we were having that discussion on the GitHub issues of CKAN, that the PostgreSQL foundation of the Datastore is largely, in my mind, in my opinion, underutilized. We're not using PostGIS for spatial queries. We're not doing, like joins. We're not doing high performance SQL queries. Even though, the Datastore search is there, the Datastore search SQL is there, the Datastore currently behaves more, again, this is just my opinion, like a tabular blob store. It's a table, but it's kind of just like a blob there that you can query on its own and do free text search, full text search on. Right. So that's the ambition of Datapusher Plus, is to unlock these capabilities and tap it. I think there's relatively low-hanging capabilities, and we've done a lot of projects where we do cataloging of enterprise data assets. And basically we were concentrating on just the metadata. But what if we take CKAN to the next level and give it more data lake-like capabilities? So you can, instead of just cataloging metadata, you can start doing queries against things that you elect to persist in the data store, right? What capabilities are these? Like smart data dictionaries, native data types, so not everything is just text, or numeric instead of using the optimized PostgreSQL data type. Data enrichment like geocoding, data screening for PIIs, data validation. Perhaps when something is updated, it validates the data in a performant manner. Aliasing the resources, so the developer can refer to the data sets using the CKAN Datastore API in an easier way instead of just looking at the resource ID. So this all goes back to that multi-pass Datapusher wish list I came up with, that 4-pass multi-pusher back in 2015. I always had that in the back of my mind. So we eventually got the opportunity to work on Datapusher Plus. It was first released last year. Basically, it's a fork of Datapusher. We combine the best of both worlds. It has the inferencing of Datapusher, and it has the speed of Xloader. But the one thing we did choose to replace messy tables with QSV, which is another thing we developed for that hedge fund client of ours. And also talking about clients, we were fortunate to have a client who was very forward-looking, the Texas Natural Resources Agency. We're building with them, not for them. They're the Texas Water Data Hub. And one of their use cases, they did a very exhaustive human-centered research the year before they even started writing code that wanted to do, basically one of their key findings is one of the best ways to improve the user experience for the data publisher is to modernize the data ingestion workflow. So you upload the resource first, you upload the data, and then infer a lot of the metadata from the data you uploaded, and then do the curation of the metadata. If you're familiar with CKAN, right now it's you put in all the metadata first, and then you put in the data, right? And there's no inferencing involved. So what the key highlights of Datapusher, it has bulletproof, ultra-fast data type inferencing. Just to give you an idea, say for about 125 megabyte CSV file, I used the New York City 311 file as an experiment. It has 40 columns. It has, like that 125 megabyte, I think is, I think up 2 million rows. It scans and infers the data types bulletproof. It's not guessing, it's not sampling in less than a second, right? Because it does multi-threading, it does all these techniques to really, with the fast processors we have now, CPU acceleration and all that to do the inferencing. It also takes advantage of PostgreSQL copy, so it's also fast in pumping the data, but it's not just pumping all the data as text, it's pumping it as a proper data types because of the bulletproof inferencing. It's robust, it's designed to be robust, so it's very tolerant of data quality issues, right? And if there's data quality issues, it informs the user right then and there, so they can change it, tweak the data. And all this is made possible because we were using that QSV Rust engine. So let's stop the slideware and go to a demo. Okay, so let me just, oops, go here for now. Okay, so here's Datapusher. Before I launch into it, let me show some salient points of Datapusher. Let me make the font bigger for people. Oh, not that big. So first off, we wanted it to be easy to maintain. It has a lot of knobs that you can tweak. Actually, thank you to Tama. I think Tama is here. We made the configuration file easier to configure just by using a .env. So you can pass all these parameters to Datapusher Plus. Some parameters I want to call out. It has this auto aliasing. So instead of referring to a resource as a resource ID, it basically uses the organization name, the dataset name, and the resource name as the alias automatically. It does summary statistics automatically if you want to. It supports Excel. Datapusher no longer supports Excel, one that we have now. It supports deduping, right? It supports auto indexing, and you know, it can index based on what it saw of the data. So if there's a threshold of, okay, there are only 3 values or more, do an index on this data. It allows download previews. So say you have a 10 gigabyte file you're harvesting, that will take forever, right? Or it will time out. So if you do previews and you're harvesting only 1,000 rows, you only want 1,000 rows, and you want to just point to the source, it supports that. In preview rows too, it has a capability to say if you give it a negative value, instead of just fetching the first 1,000 rows, it will fetch the last 1,000 rows. If you say negative 1,000 or negative 500, last 500 rows. For our friends who prefer a different date format, it can tell, you know, instead of here in the US, you do YYMMDD, you can do DMY. And all these other things that from the past, right? And it's easier to configure now. So let me start Datapusher. Right now we're in development mode. And let me show my sandbox CKAN instance. Okay, I'm here already. So here's a simple sandbox instance of Datapusher, of CKAN. So let me just create the data set. So let's see now. Let me find some good data that we can test against. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so here's like a 48 megabyte file. Let's see if we can ingest it. Well, the thing here is 48 megabytes uploading, so Datapusher is not involved yet at the moment. So if we look at the file, it's still doing its work. If we look at the Datastore tab, oh, it's too large, right? Okay, here it might be the default right now is 25 megabytes, and it's too large. But I told you earlier that we can do previews, right? So let me turn that on. So let me modify that configuration. So let's download the preview only. Let me start the Datapusher. And let's try it again. We have a different result. Okay, as you notice now, it's very chatty. The thing is, it tends to overgive you a lot of information. So here, it only said, okay, I'm only downloading the first 1,000 rows. I did that in so long and so much time. I'm normalizing the data. I'm transcoding it to UTF-8. I'm validating the file. It's well formed. I'm checking the header names if these are valid PostgreSQL identifiers. It's checking for duplicates. So there were no duplicates found. It's inferring data types and compiling statistics. Okay, it inferred all the data types, right? And this all happened in a tenth of a second. And then it copied 1,000 rows to the data store in 2/10 of a second, created an alias. The alias is this instead of this. So when you call the CKAN API, when you refer to the resource ID, instead of having this hash, you can use this instead. And since summary statistics is enabled, it created another resource characterizing as like additional metadata what it found, and it indexed things that it found to be good candidates for indexing based on the cardinality of that column, right? So all these happen in 1.2 seconds. So it's fairly fast. This is just running on a VM that I have on my machine here. So, and it did all that. And also, like I said, it created the summary statistics automatically. So it inferred all these things, right? It inferred, okay, this column is a string, this column is an integer, this is a float, the minimum, maximum, the range, the variance, and all these statistics that we will, can leverage later to do a lot more metadata inferencing that we want to do. So you can see the data dictionary is pre-populated, right? And the data types are correct. And it added some additional information to the metadata. So if you want to see, say you're using CKAN-R, or you're using some program that's using that data and you want to get the statistics, you can query CKAN and ask it to give you the summary statistics of this resource, the one we just uploaded. So you can do that. So this almost feels like tabular metadata, right? So let me upload a more interesting data set. Source. Let me see, the 311 data set is more interesting. Okay, so here we have 10,000 rows in TSV format. Okay. Because we only had preview rows, it only did the first 1,000 rows, right? But notice some things here. It infers date appropriately. And if since I asked for summary statistics, it computed the summary statistics for it as well. And notice too here that it computed statistics for dates in date format, right? And it normalizes all the dates it finds. You may have your dates in different formats. It normalizes them to RFC 3339 or ISO format. So it's database ready, right? So you can see the minimum maximum range of the created date, and even all these other interesting statistics also it returns as date. So let's see now, time check. I can do a more extensive demo, but I look forward to getting feedback from the community on it. Just wanted to show you what else is on the plans of Datapusher Plus. So right now with Texas, they support the development of Datapusher Plus. The main reason we did that was we wanted to enable this smart dataset upload workflow where you start data ingestion by basically starting with the data, uploading the data. And then that's why we did that inferencing and statistics compiling. Is then what we want to do is pre-populate as much metadata as possible. like computing, say, the extent of latitude, longitude, the spatial extent, or computing the valid values automatically. So we're doing that with them. That's currently work we're about to undertake. I didn't get a chance to demo this, but right now the data dictionary is even smarter. So if you upload, say, a CSV that's has invalid column names that are not valid identifiers in PostgreSQL, it will do some things so it becomes valid, and it updates the data dictionary with the original column name. Another thing that we're looking to do with another client is now that the data store is populated in an optimal way, is we want to improve the search experience inside when viewing the data, right? Right now, when you view the data, you have the search interface. And what we want to do is do a search builder where you can do interactive and based on the data type, have different conditions between that makes sense for that data type if you're doing it for a date or for a number. Data enrichment, another thing that we are aiming to do early this year is give the ability to do geocoding. So right now, if I go to the data store, the only interface I have here is to basically re-upload, right? But what if we can fine-tune the Datapusher job for that data, right? So say it has lat longs, or say it has addresses, and you want to get the lat longs. We want to put a more of a job customization interface here. So I'll say I want to request geocoding, or I want to request PII screening for this data set. So that you can do it here. That's one of the things we want to do. Another thing that we want to do is do data validation. So I was showing you earlier the 311 data set. So one of the things we did with QSV2 is be able to infer, now that we can do this bulletproof inferencing and compiling of statistics, we can infer the schema basically based on the statistics. And so we automatically create the JSON schema, and then you can validate other similar CS data sets against that schema. And it's very fast. It can, in that 311 example, it can validate 300,000 records a second using a fairly complex JSON schema. Another thing we want to do is have a management interface for the data store. So right now, you have to go to the data store tab of each resource that has an entry in the data store. We wanted something that you can see all the things in the data store and look at the attributes and maybe manage the what's inside the data store, change the alias, re-encode it, do geocoding, do upserts, and also make it easier to deploy. So there was a contribution from Mexico to containerize Datastore Plus. So we want it very easy to deploy and run as a web service. There's a long wish list once again. So if you go here, a lot of things we want to do, a lot of things have been checked off already. And we're hoping that with your help, your feedback, your use cases, your requests, your problem, your projects, your code, all contributions are welcome. And we're sending out a survey on what capabilities you'll want to see first. We can really build something that takes together as a community the CKAN data store to the next level. So with that, I end the demo, and maybe we can do the Q&A. Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for the great presentation. Yes, let's open the floor for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Joel. My question is for CKAN. I have used it before for service, public service in Tunisia. It was good.
Mhm.
I've used it with Linux system for the validation of CKAN Windows. And can you explain? It's there is a version compatible with other systems like Linux. How we can use it freely, I can say.
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple ways to get started on CKAN. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your names. Balig?
Balig, yes, from Tunisia.
Balig. Hi, Balig.
Hi, Joel. Thank you very much.
So yeah, there are multiple ways to do it. You know, there's a package install. If you just go to the instructions, you can do it yourself quickly. If you're familiar with Docker, I think the core team has created a Dockerized implementation, so you can just do a Docker install without having to really know what's under the hood. And
Okay.
also with, I think there's something in the AWS marketplace from Link Digital. So there are multiple ways to get started. As for Datapusher Plus, our aim is to make it easy to deploy. So it can work with even old CKAN installations on the 2.6, 2.7 series and above. So yeah, there are multiple ways to just reach out to the community, Balig, and I'm sure people will be more than happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't know how to pronounce your nickname, Di Zarchilo.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. I am 2 months old in the CKAN community, pretty fresh, and I am the CKAN administrator in my organization, and it's also new here. I'm actually the person who is supposed to implement it in this in my organization, and I am my question is about the easiest and fastest way to upload data from a Postgres database to CKAN. We have a large data warehouse, and I am building now an ETL process. I'm doing the transformation now, and the next step will be to derive a means to upload this data directly into the CKAN environment. Is this Datapusher Plus a good alternative for a beginner like me?
It should be. I mean, your use case reminds me actually of what we tried doing with that hedge fund, right? So
Yeah.
basically, they wanted a central catalog of all their data,
Exactly.
regardless of the source.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily want to have everything in CKAN because, you know, it's huge data sets, but they wanted a single source of truth for the metadata.
Yeah.
But one thing they also wanted was, oh, I just don't want the name and the location and the version. I want, can you describe to me the structure? Can you? So that's why Datapusher Plus enables that. So you can do those other things.
Okay, with the Datapusher Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Is it already inbuilt in CKAN, or is an extension? How do I have access?
It's an extension. It's an extension, and it's meant to be a drop-in replacement for Datapusher that you can, you know, just experiment with without committing to it. You can still use the traditional Datapusher. You can still use Xloader if you want to. But yeah, it's another alternative to pushing data into the CKAN data store.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, there are some questions in the chat. I don't know if the people would like to ask. For example, Carlo is asking about, okay, Francisco, you can go ahead, and then we go back to Carlo.
Yeah, thanks. Congrats on the presentation, Joe. Very nice work. So in one of the discussions, you mentioned that you wanted to have something that could be maintained by CKAN core. So my question would be if you consider using frictionless PI framework, which appears to be kind of the successor of messy tables and kind of doing the work of key SV. So just to see if you went down that road and what problems did you hit?
Yeah, I actually explored the frictionless framework, but the main criteria was performance, right? So I wanted something, because if you upload the data and while you're filling out the form, like a few seconds later, you want the inferences to be there in the form already. It has to be really performant. And my limited experiments with the frictionless framework, it didn't have that. It didn't have that performance capability. I mean, and also I didn't, I'm no Rust. Well, I'm kind of good at Rust now, but when I started QSV, I wasn't good at Rust at all. I was learning Rust, but if you use Visual Studio Code, right, and if you try using the find files feature of Visual Studio, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Visual Studio Code and you to find files. The person who wrote the search engine behind that returns searches like a whole directory in less than a second. It's the same person who wrote XSV, which was the basis of QSV. And I just basically stood on his shoulders and built on top of it, because I was scratching an itch. Because when I was doing that project for that hedge fund, we were basically crawling all their data in the enterprise, and they wanted the metadata catalog updated every night. What was the latest model? What was the latest feed? And I was doing CSV kit. It's written in Python, and it was not performing. It was dying. So I used XSV, and it was fast. And then, but the thing with XSV, it wasn't regularly maintained. So with the permission of the maintainer, I created a fork, and that's started from there. But I'm open. Actually, the guy who wrote messy tables, I forget his name, kindly made a contribution to QSV, talking about, so it supports data packages now. It publishes data packages, Parquet, and connects directly to PostgreSQL and to SQLite. So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Thomas, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So I was really happy to see the Datapusher Plus comparison. We're using the vanilla Datapusher a lot, and we hit a lot of the limitation you mentioned. But I wanted to ask about the plans or maybe current efforts to try to make the Datapusher Plus the new default Datapusher for CKAN. This is mainly concerning about long-term maintainability of the project. And I was wondering, is this a plan? And if not, what's preventing you from doing this, out of curiosity?
No, we're big fans. All the work, ever since we've been involved with the CKAN community, we always default to open. So when we migrated Boston from Socrata to CKAN, they wanted data dictionaries, and we, instead of us building it specifically for just Boston, we work with a core member of the team, Ian, to surface that capability for data dictionaries, and it's part of the CKAN core project. Boston also wanted a more modern tabular interface, and again, Ian did some work with data tables for Canada, and they adjusted more. So yeah, so we contributed back. So and then for the work we're doing with Texas right now, it requires some work with scheming. So the data ingestion workflow is more modern, right? So right now, if you use scheming, I don't know if you're familiar with scheming, it's a way to customize the metadata schema of CKAN to include more metadata fields. You basically have one long form, right? But the human-centered design research done by Texas said, okay, we need to break that up, right? So we sponsored some work again. So what basically I'm trying to say, Thomas, is it has an open source license. It's forked from Datapusher. The goal of it was to be a drop-in replacement. We supported the development of Xloader previously in a previous life in OpenGov. So yeah, if it's not my decision, it's with a core team to decide on that. But we've been doing CKAN for more than 10 years now, and yeah, as long as we're here, we'll maintain it. But one reason why I wanted to do this presentation is to get the community more involved. And if it becomes a de facto replacement, then I'm happy. If it becomes the official replacement, I'm even happier still. But that's really not my decision. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, you can go ahead if you want. Otherwise, we're going to see the chat. Somebody said something or not?
It was me. I'm
I
sorry.
think Oleg.
Yes.
Okay. I think Oleg has a question.
Okay.
Is there a best practice for monitoring notification services for jobs? Also, would love to hear if there's a migration path to Datapusher from CKAN to Era harvesters. Okay. External monitoring notification services. So one thing we did with Datapusher Plus 2 was, if you look at Datapusher, the default for the job history was SQLite, right? Which is really transient. So we made the default for Datapusher Plus another database in PostgreSQL, and you saw all that chatty messages it was emitting. It's also being captured in the Datapusher jobs. There's a Datapusher jobs database. It's all in there. Maybe we can make if you want to do proactive monitoring, we can make that that more log friendly. It also creates a log file, so you can integrate that into your monitoring service if you're using some kind of log monitoring service, notification service. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, Oleg.
I can see there is 2 questions from Carlo. Carlo, would you like to read them, or should I read it for you? I'm not sure if you're here. Okay. Okay, so the first question is, I see LAT and LON. Is there other geospatial type supported? Like, for example, is multi-polygonal supported? That's the first question. And then, do we have any support for some other tabular storage type? For example, BigQuery or Bigtable? And is this frictionless data table?
Okay.
It was during the presentation, I think. Yeah.
Right. So sorry, I missed that. So one contribution by let me actually share my look at the project right now. So yeah, one of the things we want to support is other table formats like Parquet perhaps, so you can do more performant queries. We're also looking at the experiments done by the Natural History Museum in the UK, where they changed the Datastore backend to use Elasticsearch and to use MongoDB. So that was an interesting experiment that we actually want to learn from, hopefully, and when we start experimenting with that. And if you look at the Datastore, it's really nicely architected the way the designers of the Datastore did it, because you can really replace the backend with alternate backends. So right now the default backend is PostgreSQL, but like I mentioned, the UK Natural History Museum changed their backend to a combination of Elasticsearch and MongoDB. One project we're involved in, hopefully, maybe we're kind of still discussing it. Maybe make it talk to Snowflake instead of Datapusher, of PostgreSQL for really fast performance.
Okay, and there is one question from Robert. Joe, can you show how the data looks like from the database side?
Okay, so, let me share my screen again. So let me fire up my. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, on the database side, let's look at one table that we just pumped in. So this WCP2, the resource ID is D97. So if we look at PostgreSQL, oops, D97. You know, it's just a regular table, you know, and yeah, it's just a regular table, right? That's the great thing about the Datastore. It's a very thin interface about PostgreSQL. Apart from the ID and the full text index so you can do search on it, you know, the rest is basically just a regular table.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay, we have one more question, and then I'm aware of time, so we need to wrap up. Maybe we'll have time for one or two more questions, and that will be it. So from Juan Carlos, we are using Datapusher to upload HDF files to CKAN. What would be the best way to use Xloader Datapusher Plus instead?
I'm not familiar with HDF files. Are these tabular formats or? I'm not familiar with it, but if it's tabular format, CSV, TSV, Excel, you can use Datapusher Plus. And like I mentioned, Datapusher Plus is meant to be an independent web service that is a drop-in replacement for Datapusher and Xloader. So you can experiment with it freely, you know, without committing to it, without really, you know, all you need to do is you don't even need to change it. You know, if you go to your CKAN INI file, you know, you have all the Datapusher configuration settings in there pointed to where Datapusher Plus is listening. And hopefully we'll have a container version of Datapusher Plus that we can just install with Docker quickly and just change the configuration values quickly. And then you should be able to experiment and try it out. And actually we look forward to your feedback, your contributions, your requests, and maybe, you know, build it as a community.
Great. So yeah, let's have one more question. If anybody has a question, go ahead.
With big files, yes, Riyadh. So yep, I did a lot of testing with big files, and that's why we came up with that preview function and the preview thing. One of the things I actually want to work on with big files is, say you have a 10 gigabyte file you want to push in the Datastore, but you only want the last 10,000 rows. Right now, it will have to download all 10 gigabytes and then get the 10,000 rows. One thing we're looking to do is web servers have this capability. A lot of web servers have the capability to do what we call our range requests. So I can tell it, give me the last 10,000 rows. So it doesn't even load the 10 gigabyte file, which is perfect for harvesting, right? Because often, like in what we're doing with Texas, they don't want to store all the data for all the entities in the state. They just want to harvest all the data and give a sample. So yeah, so we've been doing a lot of testing with big files.
Oh.
And I just wanted to call out Eric. Eric actually found, talking about contributions yesterday, he did a little code review and he found a little SQL injection vector. And I was able to correct it thanks to his heads up. Thank you, Eric.
Great. So I think we need to wrap up because we're running out of time. Somebody is joining now, but we are basically closing.
Maybe wrong time zone.
Yeah. We have the recording, so everything is fine. Let me share my screen again.
And actually, Joanna, I have a little announcement before
Great. Yes.
we close.
Please. Yeah.
So actually, we're also doing a study with the University of Pittsburgh for the how to make CKAN ecosystem more robust. So there will be workshops in the near future, in the next few months, where we want to engage members of the community from different cohorts, from people who are operating data portals for government, data analysts, data journalists, people who are using data as regular citizens or as people in the private sector. So, we'll be coordinating with Joanna, and we'll just keep an eye out, because we're working actively on really creating all these material so we want to engage the community.
Yeah, maybe we can even provide some information on the CKAN blog and also in the meeting document.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, I want to make an announcement, which is quite important. CKAN project is hiring a Python developer. So if you're interested in working for CKAN project, you can send your CV and details to stuart@ckan.org with a CC to Jobs Datopian. And basically, if you want to learn more about the position and the requirements, there is an article on the blog, which is called "Passionate About Open Source, We're Hiring." It is included in the presentation that you see on screen, and I just dropped the link to this presentation. So if you're interested, please. If you want to present the CKAN Monthly Live, there is a link in the meeting note with the form. You can fill out the form. I'll drop a link to this form in the chat as well, or you can write directly to me at ioanna.popova@datopian.com. If you want to, there are many ways basically to get involved in the community, in the CKAN community. One of the ways is you just understood by Joel, but also if you, for example, if you want to get involved, you can chat with us on Gitter, or you can publish some discussions on GitHub. All the links are provided in the presentation, in the meeting note, and also you can go to CKAN.org community, where you find everything that you need. One thing, I'm not sure if Adria's on the call. I think he used to be. I'm not sure if he still is, but so CKAN tech team is finalizing the upcoming CKAN 2.10 release, which is a culmination of almost 2 years of work. And basically, you can help move the release forward, generally by testing and other ways, which are described in the article on the CKAN blog, which is called "Getting Ready for CKAN 2.10." Link available in the presentation. Of course, we can stay connected. We have a new LinkedIn page, which is maybe a couple of months already, and we appreciate new followers there. So you can follow us. We share interesting content. You can also check our blog on CKAN.org, our Twitter. And with that being said, I think we're ready to go. Thank you, Joe, for the great presentation, and thanks to everybody for attending. See you next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joel. It was a pleasure, Joanna. Thank you, and see you next time. Next event. Thank you.